I began to cry, I'm crying. And as I'm going through the bathroom, I'm noticing toilet paper, tampons, pad, everything you name, gone. Like who would do that? Like who does this? So I'm crying, I'm calling 911, by the times the cops get there, I'm talking to them. I still have my TDC uniform on. I'm talking to the cops, and he looked at me, and before he can even begin to tell me that nothing he can do, he told me to come outside, come talk to him, away from my cousin. He was like, come talk to me. And he looked at me and he said something about you, and I can't leave here without you knowing this. He said, I'm not supposed to do this. He said, but I want you to see something. And he brought me inside of his car, and he let me see the screen what this guy that I was dating and about to get married to had a rap sheet so long, and I think it was like 20 some pages. Assault with a deadly weapon, assault. And he told me, he said, you work, he said, I feel like you're a part of us. Because he noticed I had my TDC uniform on. He said, did you not one time think to look at this dude back his rap sheet? He said, did you not think to look at his background? And I was like, no, I just trusted him, at the time, I'm not thinking, to go look him up. He said, just say, thank God you alive. At that moment, it didn't dawn on me, I didn't know Jesus. So what are you telling me? Thank God. I had all this stuff taken from me. What am I be thanking God for? Not knowing that it was just God's way of trying to call me and letting me know that, I needed to turn to him. I didn't pay that no mind. I'm listening to the cop, but I'm angry, I'm mad, I'm furious, all the things that I've been through, I'm upset. And so shortly after that, I called my cousin, the one that was supposed to go with me the first time. I called him and I was like, "Hey, look, I want to go get all my stuff back." I said, "I can't. I'm sorry. I'm just not gonna let him take everything that I worked hard for, because every piece of furniture in that house belonged to me. It was all mine, and I worked hard for that. So I was like, I'm gonna go get my stuff back, and I need you to go with me." I told him, I said, look, I got a pistol with me. If you can bring yours, And at the time, my cousin, he was a little known for robbing and gang banging. So I just knew he had my back. I knew who to go call on, and we finna go do this. We're going to go get all my stuff back. I can recall when I walked in to go, pick him up, that he had a lady friend with him that I had never met. And at this time, I'm not understanding why he doing this. We so close, why are you doing this? Why do I have to go and ask a female if it's okay if you go with me? Like, bro, I don't know her, So I remember he telling me, he was like, no, you just gotta go ask her, because today was me and her day. We were supposed to chill today, and you coming in between that. So go see if it's okay if I can, go with you. So I went up to her, and I never forget it. I think, as I think back on this day, it's kind of funny to me. But I went up to her and I asked her, I was like, hey, is it okay if, my cousin ride with me? I need to go take care of something, not to go into details with her. And she just looked at me, she smiled, she said, yeah, I'm gonna go too. And I'm like, no, wait, no. I say, wait. I say, what I'm about to go do, you can either go to jail or get killed. I say, no, you don't want to go with me. And she said, no, yeah, I'm gonna ride. I remember being in the front seat, she sitting in the back seat and eating eggs and pancakes. And I'm like, what? To me, it was a little weird. And I'm like, what's going on? The whole time she was pregnant, my cousin never told me. But that's another story. But we riding, and I'm like, "Ugh," he got this woman in here, this is a witness, in my head, I'm just saying all kind of things. So we pull up where this guy that, I was my fiance at the time, at his father's house. And I can recall pulling in front of the house. I told my cousin park where, my window was facing the house. So I rolled the window down and I got ready to cock the gun because I was going to shoot up the house. And before I can cock the gun, I saw a silhouette of his son go across the window. And my cousin grabbed my arm and he say, wait. He say, wait. If you shoot, what's gonna happen to that 3-year-old baby that's in there? He said that was his son. He said if you shoot in there, you could possibly kill his son. Don't do it. So I'm looking at him and I'm like, but he tore my kids' bunk beds up. He took all the food out of the fridge. He don't care nothing about mine. So whoever's in the way, just in the way. And again, I wasn't safe. I'm just hurt going through everything I'm going through because this dude just stole everything from me. I'm not thinking. So my cousin started, I guess using reverse psychology on me to try to get me to not do this. All along, he knew he wasn't going to let me do what I went to do. It was just all in the plan, all in God's plan. So as we, sitting there, we debating. Now, mind you, we still in front of this man's house. I got a gun hanging out of the window, and my cousin yet just trying to give me reasons why I shouldn't pull the trigger. So he began to ask me, "What about your babies? What about if you go to jail or die or anything happen to you? Who's gonna raise those girls?" Well, the first thing came to my mind is I have a mama; she can raise them. And he was like, "Why put that off on your mom when she have her own children?" And at the time I wasn't trying to hear all that. Next thing you know, he asked me, "Do I know Job?" At this time, I'm angry. I didn't know Jesus. I didn't know the Bible. So I didn't understand where he was going with this. So he was like, "Well, Job in the Bible," he said, "Let me tell you about him." And this whole time, we are still sitting in front of this guy's dad's house. So he began to tell me the story of Job. And the first thing came out my mouth was a curse word. I don't care anything about Job. Where was Job when all my stuff got stole? Where was God when all my stuff got stole? I don't want to hear it. I cursed my cousin out and I was like, "How dare you talk about the Lord to me when I know what you do?" Now here I am trying to point a finger at him and he's trying to help me out at the time. I'm like, we not with this. We don't go to church. We grew up Catholic. We been stopped going to the Catholic church. What is you talking about? So he said, no, he said, just listen to me. He said, I started going to this church, and so I've been reading my Bible. I know that Bible. He said, but Job lost everything and God gave it back to him twofold. He said, God will do the same thing for you. He said, it's all material things. Just say, thank God you have your life. God will bless you with those things. At this time, I'm crying, I'm cursing him out, but I am realizing that I do have two girls. So I end up rolling the window up and telling him, let's go. I'm still angry at this point, but it made sense what he was saying. So just let's go. So we drove off. About a week later, I'm at work and I'm sitting in one of the pickets and I didn't think to go back and tell the job everything that I was dealing with because I'm done, right? So I didn't think it would come back to haunt me. So I'm sitting back and this guy, by the way, never left me alone. He didn't leave me alone, for a while, kept trying to get me to take him back. He tried all kind of little things like having his car towed to my house, lying to the cops, telling them I stole his car, just all kind of things to try to ruin my life. And I didn't understand, like I never did anything to this guy. What's really going all because I figured you out. I found out you on the down low. You were cheating on me, and you was yet still pimping. So I'm leaving. I'm trying to get my life together and move on. Just leave me alone. You can do you and let me do me. So I'm at work and they call me to the warden's office. And if anybody ever worked for TDC, it's not good when the warden calling you in their office. So in my mind, I'm not understanding what's going on. What do the warden have with me? I didn't refuse to stay. I'm already on 2 disciplinaries. I was on like 6 months back to back probation for not staying. So I was like, I already know about that. What else? Haven't did anything on the job. Like, what do they want with me? So when I walked into the warden's office, I sat down and I looked and I saw the warden with the union and sitting down at a table. And I'm like, okay, so why is the union here? In my mind, I already know what time it is. I'm about to get fired for something. So I sat down and I was like, yeah, oh, my mouth was so smart. The warden, he already didn't like me because I done talked smart to him several times before. So I'm sitting there like, what? Like, what do you want with me? I was so angry. So I always had like this attitude every time you would try to approach me. So I'm like, what do you want? So he said, do you know why we call you in here? And I'm like, no. So he said the guy's name that my fiance. He said, do you know him? And I say, yes, I do. And he said, who is he to you? And I explained, I say, well, I say, up until recently, he was the guy I was living with. And so he asked me, he was like, well, do you know why, we're calling you in here? And I was like, no. He said, well, he called us and he wants us to, he told us that we needed to drug test you. I say, oh, well, I knew if I'd have got drug test, if I let them test my urine, that I was going to fail because I was smoking weed and popping pills. And I knew, that my system wasn't clean. Refusing to do a drug test is automatic termination. So I refused. And so he said, well, I have to write it up. This is your third write up. So it's going to be an automatic termination. And that's why the union is here. And so at that point, not only did he steal everything from me, he also got me fired from my job. So I went into a deep depression, very deep depression, to where I would come home from work and just literally at this time I'm living back with mom, me and my two girls, and I would come home every day from work, make sure they were good after school, and just go straight in the room and just cry. If I wasn't crying, I was popping pills just to try to cope with the things that I have been going through. I have no clothes. I have to start all over. No job. So how I'm gonna get the clothes? I had hit rock bottom. I remember, my cousin calling me, and again, he started introducing me to this church that he was going to at the time. And I kept telling him, I don't want to go to church. Where was God when all this happened to me? I'm thinking about all the things I've been through in my life. And I'm like, I'm just not going to try him right about now because he let all these things happen to me. I was told that God is in control of everything. So he controlled everything that happened to me. So I don't want to know that God. Now at this point, I just went into like a deep depression. I didn't want to live anymore. I can recall being in the bed one day just crying, 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 and the same baby that God used to wake up and save my life was the same baby that came got in the bed with me and looked at me, and she wiped the tears out my eyes and she looked at me and said, "Mom, God don't want you to cry." I stopped in my tracks and I was a little puzzled because I didn't have her in church. Now, how does she know about God? I wasn't in no one's church. So I just looked at her, and it kind of hurt my heart a little bit that I'm hurting them for them to see me in such pain. But it didn't get my attention then. I still wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I just started, going out to the clubs, being gone Monday through Sunday. I was in the streets. I would get up every morning and get the girls to school, help them do their homework, put them in the bed, and do it all over again. Come home either high drunk, don't even know how I make it back home, don't even know how I got I made it to the house. Um, at this point, I just felt like I didn't care anymore. I didn't want to be here anymore. I can recall, I had a couple of friends that worked for TDC with me that they did like a fundraiser to try to help get money to help. Some bought like clothes for the kids. Even though I didn't lose their clothes, they still was, giving me things for the kids, buying household items, things that they felt like me and myself and the girls would need. I had people donating clothes, because again, he took everything from me. I was at a point to where it's like, look, I don't know which way to go. I don't have a job. So I told my cousin, I called him up and I told him, I said, okay, I'm gonna try to go to church with you. One day I'll try this church out. I can recall going on a Tuesday night. It was Bible study. I walked in and I sat down and I'm like, first off, again, I didn't grow up sanctified, holiness. I grew up Catholic. So when I walked in, I saw people running around the church and they shouting, and I'm like, no, these people are crazy. They crazy. I don't want to be in here. Looking at my cousin like, wait a minute. I remember when I was about, I'm gonna go back a little bit because it's gonna tie into what God, the plan God had for me all along. Remember, I told you guys that I love church, even at a young age. I had this one aunt. It was my grandmother's brother's wife, and she would go to the holiness church. She was sanctified, and I remember staying the night over because she had a daughter around by my age, and but three daughters close to my age, and so I would go spend some time with them. And I remember going to church with her one time, and I remember, they were shouting and dancing. I think I probably was about 8 years old, and a lady, she was in the spirit, and her hand hit me in the eye. And I can recall going back as a little kid saying, them people crazy. I don't ever want to go into a church like this again. I thank you, Amy, for that, for introducing me into holiness. So I had to put that out there. But fast forward back to me getting into this church, and I'm like, this like the church ain't so and so brought me to. And I'm in here and I'm watching the people, they just shouting and crying out, and I'm like, nah, this ain't for me. So I can recall the pastor saying, "Sister, can I pray for you?" And I'm looking back like, who he talking to? And he pointed at me. So I'm looking at my cousin like, oh, what you told this man about me? So when I get up there, he whispered in my ear some things that nobody knew about me. So I knew couldn't nobody have told him but God. But because I don't know Jesus for myself, and I'm already so angry, I took it out on my cousin. I was like, I'm not coming back because you told this man my business. And my cousin was like, hey, I promise you, whatever he told you, I never spoke to him about you. And then it wasn't until one night I laid in the bed and it dawned on me. Nobody knew what that man said about you but you. And I was like, oh wow. And so I told my cousin, I said, okay, I'll go with you again on another Tuesday. And so, my thing for Sundays was I partied on Saturday night, Sunday morning. I just wanted to chill. So notice I never told him on a Sunday morning. It was always a Tuesday night. So I told him, I said, okay, I'll go back with you. So at this time, I'm still broken, want my things back, I'm still trying to find a way to get this guy to give me all my stuff back. I found out where my merchant all my property was. I found out where he had it stored. And I was trying to get my stuff back. I can recall this pastor calling me up again, and he was praying for me, and he said, God is going to bless you. Everything that was taken from you, he's going to restore it, but you have to give him something. I left there again, like, I don't know what this man talking about. Mind you, I'm still drinking, partying, going to the clubs, doing what I want to do. At this point, one of my old friends that, me and him, I know I told you guys on part one how I started having sex at an early age because everything I went through. And my first, me and him hooked back up at this point. And he had a record label and he was a producer, so he knew big people, you know, he knew how to, he knew the connections. So I would hang with him a lot of times, be in the studio with him, and me and him would hang out at this point. We having sex, we hanging out, and I done got so far deep into sin to where not only am I sleeping with men, I'm also sleeping with women. So me and him will get together and we would, have threesomes, and I'm just doing what I want to do. But because I was introduced to this at an early age, I thought that this was all okay. I was so confused. I didn't know who I was or who I wanted to be. But yet I'm yet going to this church every now and then with my cousin, and God is yet working and dealing with me without me even knowing. So I can recall, me and this guy, he say, the women really like you. He say, man, everybody like you. Everybody want to be around you. He say, I tell you what, I want you to help me out. He said, I got two girls that, be in all the videos that we have going on. he know that I do hair, so he was like, if you can keep their hair up for me, and just help them out, fix their wardrobe, because I was in the fashion. If you help them with their wardrobe, do their hair for the videos, I'll pay you. And so I started off doing that. And then me and one of the ladies, she asked me, do, I know anything about modeling? And I was like, no, never did it, never wanted to do it. And, I was heavy set. So, the enemy had me thinking I had low self esteem. All along, I was stronger than what I thought. But as I keep telling my story, you'll understand what I'm saying. So I'm thinking I got low self-esteem. I'm like model, So she began to tell me that, you're a beautiful woman, and I believe you can do it. You can actually be in a photo shoot, So instead of me doing it, I started my own modeling agency with just her. And so before you know it, I don't know, out of nowhere, I was doing auditions, and I ended up with maybe 20 something females. And I said, whoa, I don't know anything about this profession. I say, where did this come from? My friend came to me and he told me, he said, I'll back you up 100% and you keep all the money from it. He said, I just want to look out for you. He say, look, I'll help you book gigs. I'll help you do whatever to get your name out there. Just come up with the name you want, come up with your logo, and we can get this going. Who before I knew it, I was doing fashion shows. I had my logo. I had t-shirts with my name on it. I had everybody trying to be a part of my modeling agency. I get a phone call one day telling me, hey, and mind you, I'm still going to church. I'm like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm getting a phone call and somebody calling me and say, "Hey, this is the publicist with Alizé, the alcohol, and we would like to do a photo shoot using your girls." And I didn't just have girls; I had guys as well. And so at that time, I'm like, this isn't real. Not I'm like, this is a joke. And when the guy came up to meet me, it was real. Before you know it, we doing this whole photo shoot, and my girls are advertising alcohol, half shirts on, barely half clothes on. I'm just, not knowing I'm out here promoting sex and alcohol, not knowing that, hey, this is not right, this is a sin, you going to hell. So the devil was really setting me up, making me think, hey, you can get all your things back. Cause I was very materialistic. You can get all your things back and then some. You blowing up. We had this phone call to bag up every time they had an event out here in Houston, whatever big club had events, they would call me and they want us to host them. We were hosting the events for the night, VIP, my girls was in the VIP section, drinks for free, just everything, and I'm not realizing what's going on at the time. I'm steady going to church every now and then with my cousin, but I'm like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, as I'm saying. But here I got the devil telling me he's gonna make me famous and give me money. But I keep hearing this pastor that keep telling me things about myself that nobody knows. I keep hearing his voice on the other end. And so I'm yet going through the motion because now the devil showing me that having fame is a good thing, not knowing that it was still yet killing me on the inside. I remember doing this fashion show in Louisiana. I got a phone call from this company and they were like, "Hey, we want you guys to come out. Everything paid on us, we want you to come to the radio station and do an interview, and we'll have your name, your logo, and your name on the billboards. We having this big old fashion show and we want you to headline it." And so I remember getting my girls together. We on our way to Louisiana, and as we pulling up in Louisiana, billboards have the title of my company with my name is, my little brother on the side of me, just, oh, you blowing up, you blowing up, you don't see it, you don't see it, and I'm like, man, So I remember going in and we doing these things. Like I said, I'm just having sex, just doing drugs, popping pills, drinking, I'm walling out, but at the same time, I'm still being torn in between this church that I'm going to and this lifestyle that the devil trying to give me. And so we at this fashion show, and I remember sitting down and I'm at a table and my phone rang. And I picked the phone up, and it was a big time, not gonna say the name, but it was a big time magazine in New York. And I remember them saying, "Hey, that the PR for this magazine, and I wanted to let you know that we want to do an interview with you. Bring two of your girls. We're gonna fly you out, pay for everything. We want to promote your business." At that point, I'm like, wow, it's happening. I can buy 500 purses, in my head. I can buy the car I want. I can get my mom the house she want. My girls will be set. This is the things that are going through my mind. And I told him, I said, okay, well, it was a Friday night. I'll get back with you on Monday, and we'll discuss details. So I'm yet in this club, we're in Louisiana, and I used to pop pills all the time. And at this time, I had a pill in my hand, and drinks were free, by the way. Everywhere we went, me and my girls and my crew, all drinks were free. So I remember, at this time, I remember going, sitting down like in the top at the DJ booth, and I'm sitting there looking down at everybody, my family, because I brought my family along with me, the ones that used to hang with me all the time. And mind you, growing up, this is where I say when I thought I had low self-esteem, but God reminded me this. Growing up, they used to follow me. I am the oldest living granddaughter. So all the parties, all the drinking and the smoking was always on me, and we would get together and just party. So they follow me doing all these things. Now they out here in Louisiana with me. I'm looking at everybody. They're drinking, they're popping pills, they excited because they see I'm blowing up and they know I'm gonna bring them with me. But I'm sitting up there with this same drink in my hand that I had from the moment I walked in the club, and the pill in the other hand. Had not taken the pill or took another sip, knowing that very same night I was gonna go be in the hotel with some girls and my friend that I told you guys that helped me build this brand. And I knew we was gonna go in there and do some things that I knew I had no business doing. And I can recall sitting there and just looking down and like, like what am I doing, so I remember just letting the drink just sit there. I didn't drink it, and I didn't take the pill. I remember getting into the hotel room, and I just wanted to be left alone. And I'm not really understanding what's going on. I'm like, what's really going on here? Like, I didn't understand that it was God really trying to pull me, So I went to church that Sunday. I went to church that Sunday, and I got in church. And once I got in church, I sat there and I just remember crying. I remember crying and, telling the Lord that, you're going to have to show me what it is that you want me to do. I can recall getting prayer that day. And, I got prayer and I went back, and, I went back to my seat, but it still seemed like something was missing. And I continued on, going out and drinking, and, because I'm still torn, not understanding how to be free from all of these things that I'm dealing with. So at the time, I went spend the night with one of my friends. Me and her went to the club that Saturday, but I told her, I say, the key is if I go out with you Saturday, I have to be at church that Sunday. Well, we went out, went to the after hours. We high on ecstasy pills. And if anybody ever took those pills, you know that they keep you powered up. You have all this energy until you come down on it. So we went to church that Sunday morning straight from the club. We didn't go home. I went to church with I just pulled on a skirt, went to church in the same way that I was from being in the club the night before. I can recall walking in there, and, the friend that I had with me, she didn't know anything about church. So to see everyone jumping, shouting, running, to her, that was like, she was terrified, So she left me. So I'm sitting in church, I'm in a daze, I'm powered up, and I'm not understanding, like, why am I here? And I kept saying this to myself. So the pastor called me up. He say, "Sister, can I pray for you?" And I went on and I got up. And at this time, when I got up, he whispered in my ear and say, "I know you're high." He say, "But God want to use you." He say, "Let him in." And he began to pray for me. And before I knew it, I was on the ground. And when I got up, I didn't understand. I'm like, wait 1 minute, what happened? Did he push me? In my head, this is what I'm thinking. Did he push me? So not understanding the whole dynamics of the spirit, of the Holy Ghost, or none of that, I didn't understand nothing. So I went back to my seat, and when I before I can sit down good, I began dancing. And I'm like, whoa, wait 1 minute, I'm high. But I couldn't contain myself. And I just began praising God. And I remember leaving church that day. It was a feeling on me that I just couldn't explain. But it wasn't enough to make me just fully surrender to God. And I remember going back and saying to myself that one day, God, I'm still 1 foot in, 1 foot out. At this time, God blessed me. Even in my mess, He blessed me with another place. He furnished the whole apartment. I had better furniture than before. That was better than the furniture that was taken from me. He allowed me to go out one night and see the guy that stole everything from me. He was more scared of me than I was of him. Because at that time, I had been going to church. I wasn't saved, but I had been going. So I did know a little bit about forgiveness. And at that time, he was so terrified, trying to hurry up and leave because he know I had guy cousins. He knew that my little girl, my oldest daughter, father, he didn't want to mess with him. So he just was terrified that I was going to try to get revenge. He offered to give me my stuff back, but at this point, it was maybe 6 to 8 months later. And I told him, I said, "Listen, you've been having this stuff that long. I don't need it and I don't want it. God bless me." And I looked at him when he apologized. I said, "I forgive you. I forgave you long time ago. You need to forgive yourself and ask God to forgive you." At that point, the dude he was nervous. He didn't know, man, this girl crazy. She finna try something. So he left. I remember coming back and telling the pastor, I was so excited how I handled that. I came back and I told the pastor, I passed that test. So thinking back, the pastor would call me like almost every day to check on me because at this point, my cousin had left me. He brought me to the church, but he left. He ended up going to prison. So I was kind of puzzled. Well, God, you had him in here, but all along, it was God using him to draw me in. So I'm in the church now and I thought about it. I say, you know what? I'm going to give up everything. So I gave up the modeling agency. I gave it up and I told myself that I was just going to try to serve the Lord. He blessed me with another job. So I'm just going to raise my daughters and try to. But I still was going to the club. I still hadn't fully made my mind up. I can recall in this new place where I lived, I'm walking outside one day and I was finna take the girls to the skating ring. And, again, I thought, I was just, had low self-esteem. So I'm outside, with my breast showing. I had this low cut shirt on. I'm with the kids dressed this way. Now that I look back on that, just foolish. But I'm about to take the girls to the skating ring, and I hear somebody say, "Sister Latasha." And if you put a sister in front of the name, that must mean this somebody in church. I was so terrified to turn around and look back till I was like, okay, I hear that sister. So this got to be. I'm trying to cover up and close up because I didn't want this person to see me with my breasts hanging out. So when I turned around, there was a certain preacher in the church. And he was like, "Oh, you live over here?" I was like, "Yeah." He said, "Oh, okay, I do too." And then I was like, "Oh my God, this is one of the preachers in the church. I got the dress right. I got to." So now that I know that this priest, see, God had a plan for everything. He uses, even when the devil uses a situation for destruction, God always turn it around for his good. So at this moment, now I'm thinking, okay, this preacher live over here. So now every time I step out, I'm making sure I'm watching what I got on. So this was God's way of cleaning me up on the outside first. And so now I'm watching the clothes I'm wearing because I don't know when I'm gonna run into this guy. God had a plan. So now, I am in church, but I'm, still kind of going out a little bit, not as much, you know, um, but I'm still, doing both. And one day, I decided to, call the pastor, and I just, began to tell him the things that I went through, and I needed, prayer because I wanted to be delivered and be healed from all the things that I went through. So I went to church that Sunday. He prayed for me. That I remember maybe like 2 days later, I started feeling convicted about going out. Convicted my mouth. Every other word that came out my mouth was a curse word, and so instantly God took cursing away from me. Next thing you know, I wasn't drinking anymore. I wasn't popping pills anymore. I didn't have a desire to go out. I started going to church on Tuesdays, on Fridays, on Sunday mornings. And I'm like, well, okay, God, what are you doing with me? Um, I remember the pastor calling me one Friday evening because Friday was the night that I would always hook up with my long-term friend, and we would always go have sex, whether it be just me and him and somebody else. And I remember this particular Friday, I went to pick him up. And when I drove up, I just had this instant conviction that came over me. And when he got in the car, I was quiet. I had to let him know because we would always pop ecstasy before sex or have a little drink. So I just let him know. I say, hey, no more alcohol, no more drugs. And so we got back to the place, and he was like, you're different. And so we sat down, and I just started talking to him, and I was like, hey, I said, I got a question for you. We've been messing around like this off and on for many, many years. Have you ever thought about marriage? I spoke on marriage. He went off. He told me that the church I was going to was a cult that is turning me to something that, that I shouldn't be, and that, he knew this was going to happen once I started going to church. And at that moment, that was the last time me and him ever had contact with each other. Needless to say, I dropped him off. And at that point, that's when I started keeping myself for God. Now, I am trying to, walk this walk. I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not cursing anymore. I'm going to church now. Every church service, I remember calling the pastor saying, hey, now that I'm saved, I want the Holy Ghost. I kept saying, I want the Holy Ghost. He said, well, just keep praying because the Holy Ghost is a gift. And he comes on a clean life. You keep living a clean life, you ought to know. So a lot of people don't know that if you stop doing all these outward sins, you still have inward sins. Sins are like for these iniquities, the hatred, unforgiveness, thoughts in your mind. Those things will keep you back. So I just had to sit back and think real hard, like what is what is it that that you want me to let go, God? I done let all these things go. What else is it that you want me to let go? And so I can recall, someone said, have you asked your mom and your grandmother to forgive you? I sat back and I smiled. I was like, my grandmother? Nah, I done already talked to my mom, but my grandmother, after all she's done to me, why do I need? And instantly the Lord let me know, regardless to what people do to you, it's not how people treat you, it's how you treat people. And if you want to live this life, you can't, pay back. You can't. So all the talking back I did toward my grandmother, all the hate I had in my heart, all the time I spit on her, all these things God had, He forget those things that we do once we repent. But it's just like I had to go back and get that right. So He let me know you have to get that right. I can recall calling my grandmother and apologizing, and she said, "You didn't do anything to me." And I say, "Well, God knows this is something God want me to do." Thank you guys for tuning in to part 2. I am so sorry I'm running out of time, but thank you so much for the love and support you shown me. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow for part 3. Stay tuned. Love you. Bye bye.